One simple act of kindness in a grocery store changed Sarah Miller's life forever. When she paid for a struggling father's groceries, she never expected to be approached by a man in an expensive suit moments later. What was in the mysterious envelope he handed her? And why had someone been watching her every move that day? The answer would transform not just her life, but the lives of people she'd never imagined connecting with. Sarah Miller had built her marketing career from nothing. At 38, she had the title and the responsibility, but the joy that once filled her work had slowly drained away. This Tuesday evening, after a particularly grueling day presenting campaigns to tone-deaf executives, all she wanted was to grab a few essentials and collapse at home. The neighborhood supermarket was busy with the after-work crowd. Sarah navigated the aisles mechanically, her mind still replaying the criticism from the day's meetings. She was so distracted she nearly collided with an older woman comparing prices on canned soup. "Sorry," Sarah mumbled, stepping back. The woman offered a tired smile. "No harm done, dear. We're all just trying to make it through, aren't we?" Something in the woman's gentle wisdom made Sarah pause and really look around her for the first time that day. That's when she noticed them at the checkout counter. A man in his mid-40s with slumped shoulders and a girl about 9 years old, clutching his hand. The cashier's expression shifted from professional friendliness to barely concealed impatience as the man fumbled with a collection of coins. "I'm sorry," the man said quietly, his voice educated but strained. "I should have enough here." His hands trembled slightly as he counted out quarters and dimes. The girl looked up at her father with complete trust. Though Sarah could see the awareness in her eyes, this child understood more than she should have to at her age. The father wore jeans that had been carefully mended and a button-down shirt that had seen better days, but was immaculately clean. Sarah noticed his worn wedding ring and the way he protectively stood between his daughter and the growing line of frustrated customers behind them. The cashier sighed loudly. "Sir, you're still $43.27 short. Do you want to put some items back?" The man's face flushed with embarrassment. "Yes, His voice faltered as he stared at the modest pile of groceries, clearly trying to decide which necessities they could live without. The daughter whispered something, and he bent down. "It's okay, sweetie," he said, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "We'll figure it out." Sarah felt a memory stir, her own father standing in a similar checkout line 25 years ago, after the factory had laid him off. The same mixture of dignity and desperation. The same determined effort to shield his children from the harsh realities of adult life. The same eyes that held stories of a better past. Behind them, a businessman loudly cleared his throat, jangling his keys. Another customer muttered about holding up the line. The cashier's finger hovered over the void button. Sarah moved forward before she had fully decided to act. "I'll cover the difference," she said, stepping to the counter and pulling out her credit card. The man turned, startled. "No, please, that's not necessary. We can put things back." Sarah recognized the pride in his voice, the same pride her father had shown even in their hardest times. After losing his executive position at 55, he'd never fully recovered his career or his confidence. "Sometimes the hardest thing is accepting help," he'd told Sarah years later. "But sometimes, that's also the bravest thing." "I'd like to," Sarah said simply. "If that's okay." The man studied her face, searching for pity or judgment. Finding neither, his expression shifted through a sequence of emotions: resistance, resignation, and finally, something like relief. "Emma and I would be grateful," he finally said, his voice barely audible. "I used to be someone who helped others, before." He didn't finish the thought. The girl, Emma, looked up at Sarah with solemn eyes. "Thank you, ma'am," she said with perfect politeness that spoke volumes about her upbringing. Sarah handed her card to the cashier, who processed the transaction with newfound efficiency. "You don't know what this means," the man said, as the receipt printed. "I'm Michael, by the way. Michael Thompson." "Sarah Miller," she replied, offering her hand. His handshake was firm despite everything, another vestige of the man he once was. "I promise. When things turn around," Michael began. Pay it forward when you can, Sarah said. That's all. As the cashier finished bagging their items, Sarah felt a strange mix of emotions. There was satisfaction, yes, but also a nagging awareness of how precarious anyone's situation could be. Her own company had cut her department's budget by 20% last quarter. 3 of her colleagues had been let go. Her rent had increased, and her mother's medical bills kept coming. This $43 would mean pasta dinners for the rest of the week, but somehow that seemed less important now. Thank you, Michael said again, his eyes shining with unshed tears. People don't. They don't see us anymore. You did. He gathered the bags, and Emma helped by carrying the lightest one. As they headed toward the exit, Sarah noticed Emma whisper something to her father, who nodded. The girl turned back and gave Sarah a small wave. It was such a simple gesture, so human and connected, that Sarah felt something open within her chest, a warmth she hadn't experienced in too long. As Sarah paid for her own groceries, she glanced at the items Michael and Emma had purchased. Nothing extravagant, a loaf of bread, peanut butter, pasta, sauce, apples, cheese slices, milk, and a small bottle of children's medicine for colds. Among the items was a modest notebook with puppies on the cover and a pack of pencils, school supplies for Emma, no doubt. Sarah had noticed Emma clutching a worn teddy bear missing an eye, its fur matted from years of love. The toy had peeked out from her jacket, a silent companion through whatever hardships they'd endured. Did you find everything you needed? The cashier asked mechanically, scanning Sarah's items. Yes, thank. Sarah stopped mid-sentence, watching through the store window as Michael discreetly put something back on a return shelf by the exit. She could just make out the label Children's Multivitamins. Actually, wait a moment, Sarah said. Could you add something else? Sarah quickly walked to the shelf and picked up the vitamins Michael had reluctantly abandoned. She also grabbed a $50 store gift card from the display near the register. These two, please, she said, returning to the checkout. The cashier raised an eyebrow but scanned the items without comment. Sarah hurried through the exit, catching up to Michael and Emma in the parking lot. Michael, she called, you forgot something. He turned, confusion crossing his face, as she handed him the bag with the vitamins and gift card. I can't accept more, he said immediately, trying to return it. Emma needs these, Sarah said quietly, so the girl couldn't hear. And the gift card is just in case you're running low before your next. She didn't know how to finish without assuming too much about their situation. Payday, Michael supplied with a sad smile. It's been a while since I had one of those. Sarah watched Michael and Emma walk toward the bus stop before turning toward her own car, an aging Honda she'd bought used 5 years ago. The evening was growing darker, the streetlights casting long shadows across the parking lot. Her mind was still on the father and daughter when a voice spoke from just behind her. Ms. Miller. Sarah turned, startled. A well-dressed man in his early 40s stood a few feet away. His tailored charcoal suit probably cost more than her monthly rent. His leather shoes gleamed even in the dim light of the parking lot. Everything about him, from his perfectly knotted tie to his confident stance, spoke of privilege and power. Yes? She replied cautiously, her keys gripped tightly between her fingers as her father had once taught her. My name is James Bennett. I'm an attorney with Preston and Blackwell Associates. His voice was smooth and professional. He made no move to step closer, seemingly aware of her wariness. How do you know my name? Sarah asked, glancing around the parking lot. A few shoppers loaded groceries into cars, but no one seemed to be paying attention to them. My client is interested in speaking with you, Bennett said, ignoring her question. He reached into his suit jacket and withdrew a cream-colored envelope, the paper thick and expensive. Your client. Sarah didn't reach for the envelope. I don't understand. Bennett extended his hand further, offering the envelope. All the information you need is inside. My client would appreciate your discretion in this matter. Hesitantly, Sarah accepted the envelope. It was heavy, the paper soft yet substantial beneath her fingers. An embossed logo, Pan B, adorned the upper left corner. Who is your client? She asked directly. Bennett smiled slightly. Someone who was impressed by what they witnessed today. He glanced toward the bus stop where Michael and Emma had been standing, then back to Sarah. The letter explains everything. Good evening, Ms. Miller. Before she could ask anything else, Bennett turned and walked toward a black sedan waiting at the edge of the parking lot. The car's engine started as he approached, and moments later, they pulled away, leaving Sarah alone with the mysterious envelope. Under the harsh fluorescent lights of the parking lot, Sarah examined the envelope. No return address, just her name written in elegant script across the front. She turned it over in her hands, feeling its weight, wondering what could possibly be inside and why anyone would take notice of a simple act of kindness. Sarah sat in her car, the envelope resting on the passenger seat like some strange, imported object that didn't belong in her ordinary life. Her phone rang, the screen lighting up with her sister Jennifer's name. "Hey, Jen," she answered, still staring at the envelope. "Sarah, are you watching the news? There's a new scam targeting women in the area. Some guy in a suit approaches them in parking lots claiming to be a lawyer or something. Please tell me you're being careful out there." Sarah's pulse quickened. What exactly does this scam involve? They get your personal information somehow and use it to clean out bank accounts. Mrs. Keller down the street lost almost $12,000 last week. Sarah glanced again at the envelope. How do they approach people? I don't know all the details. Just be careful, okay? Don't talk to strangers in parking lots. After hanging up, Sarah examined the envelope more carefully. The paper quality seemed too expensive for a scam. The embossed letterhead looked legitimate. She ran her finger over the raised logo, feeling the craftsmanship. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. The universe will present you with moments of decision, Sarah Bear. The trick is recognizing them and facing them with courage rather than fear. Was this one of those moments? Or was it simply a sophisticated trap? Sarah reached for the envelope, then hesitated. The man, Bennett, hadn't asked for any information from her. He'd only given her the envelope. Sometimes courage is just curiosity that won't back down, her father had also said. Sarah took a deep breath and carefully broke the seal on the envelope. The letterhead was impressive. Preston and Blackwell Associates, attorneys at law in raised, navy blue lettering. Sarah immediately recognized the Blackwell name. Lawrence Blackwell was a fixture in local news, a real estate developer who had transformed the city skyline over the past 3 decades. His name adorned buildings, hospital wings, and occasional society pages. The letter itself was brief and formal. Dear Ms. Miller, on behalf of our client, Mr. Lawrence Blackwell, we extend an invitation to meet with him tomorrow, March 27th, at 10 a.m. at Blackwell Tower, 1200 Central Avenue, 44th floor. Mr. Blackwell would like to discuss a matter of mutual interest. For your convenience and to compensate for any professional adjustments required to accommodate this meeting, please find enclosed a consultation fee of $2,000. This invitation and its contents are confidential. We appreciate your discretion in this matter. A car will be waiting outside your residence at 9:30 a.m. should you choose to accept this invitation. Your presence would be greatly appreciated. Respectfully, James Bennett, ESQ Senior Partner Preston and Blackwell Associates. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she checked the envelope again. Inside was a certified check made out to her name for exactly $2,000. What the hell? She whispered. Lawrence Blackwell wanted to meet with her? The Lawrence Blackwell whose real estate empire was valued at billions? The man whose aggressive business tactics had both revitalized and gentrified entire neighborhoods, depending on who you asked? Sarah tried to make sense of it. Had she inadvertently done something to affect his business? Was there some connection between her marketing work and Blackwell's interests? Had she somehow offended him or his company? She reached for her phone and searched Lawrence Blackwell for any recent news. The results showed pictures of an elegant man in his mid-60s with silver hair and piercing blue eyes. The latest articles mentioned his withdrawal from public life following his wife Eleanor's death 3 years earlier. Business forums were filled with speculation about the company's changing direction after Blackwell had abruptly canceled the Riverside development project, a controversial plan that would have replaced a historic neighborhood with luxury condominiums. One quote from Blackwell stood out from an article dated 6 months ago. "There comes a time when a man must reevaluate what legacy truly means. Buildings fall. What endures is how we've affected the lives of others." Sarah stared at the check again. $2,000. For her, that represented 2 months of rent or half of her mother's outstanding medical bills. What could Lawrence Blackwell possibly want from her? Sleep evaded Sarah that night. She sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open, diving deep into everything she could find about Lawrence Blackwell. The story that emerged was complicated. A self-made man who had started as a construction worker at 19 and built an empire through intelligence, determination, and what some would call ruthlessness. Blackwell doesn't know the meaning of compromise. One article quoted a former business partner. "When he wants something, he gets it, one way or another." Another piece profiled his late wife, Eleanor, a former social worker who had established food banks throughout the city. Their romance had been unexpected, the calculating businessman and the idealistic humanitarian. Yet, by all accounts, their marriage had been genuinely loving, her influence softening some of his harder edges. After Eleanor's death from cancer, Blackwell had become increasingly reclusive. His company continued operations, but the man himself rarely made public appearances. Rumors circulated about his health, his mental state, even his whereabouts. At 3 a.m., Sarah finally decided she would attend the meeting. Curiosity, if nothing else, demanded it. But she wouldn't go unprepared. She drafted a list of questions, researched the company's recent projects, and even prepared a brief statement declining any propositions that might compromise her ethics. Whatever game Blackwell was playing, she would walk in with her eyes wide open. Morning arrived too quickly. Sarah chose her outfit carefully, professional but not flashy, a navy blue dress that projected confidence without pretension. As promised, a black sedan arrived outside her apartment building at precisely 9:30 a.m. The driver was courteous but silent as they made their way downtown toward the gleaming Blackwell Tower. Blackwell Tower stretched skyward, all glass and steel, a monument to one man's vision. The security desk already had Sarah's name. A private elevator whisked her to the 44th floor, where a poised assistant led her through minimalist corridors to a set of mahogany doors. "Mr. Blackwell is expecting you," the assistant said, opening the door. The office beyond was surprisingly understated. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking panorama of the city, but the furniture was simple, almost Spartan. A large desk of polished wood, a few carefully chosen pieces of art, photographs in silver frames, a younger Blackwell with a woman Sarah recognized from her research as Eleanor. Lawrence Blackwell himself stood by the window, silhouetted against the morning light. He turned as she entered, and Sarah was struck by how the photographs failed to capture an essential quality about him. In person, his eyes held a weariness that no public image had shown, the subtle burden of someone carrying invisible weight. "Ms. Miller," he said, his voice rich and measured. "Thank you for coming." He gestured to a seating area with 2 leather chairs. "Please." Sarah remained standing. "Before we sit, Mr. Blackwell, I'd appreciate knowing why I'm here." A faint smile crossed his face. "Direct. Good. I've had enough obsequiousness to last several lifetimes." He moved to one of the chairs and sat, leaving Sarah little choice but to take the other. "Yesterday evening," Blackwell began, "I was at Miller's Pharmacy inside Westlake Grocery, picking up a prescription. I witnessed something from the pharmacy counter, something most people would consider unremarkable in today's world." Sarah's confusion must have shown on her face. "I saw you help Michael Thompson and his daughter Emma," Blackwell clarified. "I saw your kindness, its genuine nature, its lack of hesitation." "You were there?" Sarah asked, trying to remember if she'd noticed him among the shoppers. Blackwell nodded. "I found as one grows older and more successful, one becomes increasingly invisible in ordinary settings. No one expects to see Lawrence Blackwell debating decongestants in aisle 5. He leaned forward, his posture changing. "What interests me, Ms. Miller, is not just that you helped, though that alone sets you apart in a world of bystanders, but how you helped. with dignity, preservation of pride, true seeing. I don't understand what this has to do with you, Mr. Blackwell. I saw myself in that man you helped, Blackwell admitted, his voice softening. 40 years ago, that was me. One paycheck from disaster with too much pride to accept help. He stood and walked to a photograph on his desk. And I saw my Eleanor in you, the same instinctive compassion. She would have done exactly what you did, he added, his voice catching slightly. Sarah remained silent, sensing there was more. What you couldn't have known, Blackwell continued, is that I recognized Michael Thompson. Not immediately, it took me until this morning to place him. But I know exactly who he is, or rather, who he was. Sarah felt a chill. You know him? 8 years ago, Michael Thompson was a senior financial analyst at Blackwell Development. Brilliant mind, ethical to a fault. Blackwell's expression darkened. He discovered a critical flaw in the financing structure of the Bridgeport complex. A flaw that would have cost my company millions once interest rates shifted. A flaw that my own financial team had missed. Blackwell returned to his chair. He came directly to me, bypassing 3 levels of management. I remember thinking, here's a man with both intelligence and integrity. I gave him a substantial bonus. Made promises about his future with the company. His fingers tapped against the armrest. 3 years later, when Eleanor was diagnosed with cancer, I took a step back from daily operations. My focus shifted. The board brought in new management to maintain growth targets. And Michael? Sarah prompted when Blackwell fell silent. Michael's wife was diagnosed with an aggressive form of leukemia not long after. Experimental treatments. Insurance complications. His performance began to suffer as medical bills mounted. The new management, Blackwell's jaw tightened. They terminated him during a downsizing initiative. Productivity concerns. The paperwork said. You didn't know? I should have. That's the point. I was so consumed with Eleanor's treatment, with my own grief, that I allowed the company I built to operate without its heart. His voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. When his wife died, the medical debt crushed him. He lost everything. The weight of this revelation hung in the air between them. Sarah tried to reconcile the broken man from the grocery store with the brilliant analyst Blackwell described. I didn't recognize him yesterday, Blackwell admitted. My own employee, a man who once saved my company, and I walked past him for months in that same neighborhood. I didn't see him until I saw you seeing him. Sarah's mind was racing. So this meeting, is it about Michael? In part. Blackwell stood again, moving to his desk. He picked up a bound document and returned, placing it on the coffee table between them. It's also about what Eleanor wanted before she died, and what I've been too consumed with bitterness to follow through on until now. Sarah glanced at the document. Its cover read, The Eleanor Blackwell Foundation, Proposal and Implementation Strategy. 2 weeks before she died, Blackwell continued, Eleanor made me promise to establish a foundation focused on medical debt relief and support for families facing catastrophic healthcare costs. She'd been working on the framework for months. Said she finally understood what our wealth should be used for, now that she'd seen the system from the patient's side. He tapped the document. I've had a team quietly developing this for the past year. What I've lacked is someone to lead it, someone with both compassion and strength. Someone who understands the human element but won't be crushed by the scale of the need. Sarah stared at Blackwell, the pieces finally connecting. You want me to run your foundation? I want to offer you the opportunity, yes. Blackwell's expression was earnest now, the practiced businessman momentarily set aside. The position comes with full autonomy and a salary of $150,000 annually, double your current compensation at Westlake Marketing. Sarah's shock must have registered on her face. Yes, I had you thoroughly researched last night, Blackwell acknowledged without apology. Your work is excellent, by the way, though I question whether creating campaigns for fast food chains and discount furniture truly utilizes your abilities. Those clients pay the bills, Sarah replied, a defensive edge in her voice. Indeed, Blackwell nodded. And this foundation would allow you to do work with genuine meaning while being generously compensated. The foundation's first mission would be providing full assistance to Michael Thompson and his daughter, housing, education, healthcare, and financial rehabilitation. Sarah's mind reeled at the proposition. It seemed too perfect, too convenient. Mr. Blackwell, while I'm flattered by your offer, I have to ask, is this about actually helping people, or assuaging your guilt over what happened to Michael? Rather than being offended, Blackwell seemed to appreciate her directness. A fair question. The honest answer is both. Eleanor used to say that guilt without action is self-indulgence, but guilt channeled into change is growth. He paused. I failed Michael Thompson. I failed many Michael Thompsons over the years while building my fortune. I can't undo that, but I can commit to doing better moving forward. Sarah studied him, searching for signs of insincerity. Why me? Because you happened to see me at that grocery store? There must be hundreds of qualified people with actual experience in nonprofit management. Experience can be acquired. Character reveals itself in moments when we think no one is watching. Blackwell leaned forward. You could have helped that man in many ways. You could have loudly announced your charity, making a show of your generosity. You could have condescended to him. Instead, you preserved his dignity. You saw him as a person, not a problem. He let the silence stretch for a moment before continuing. That's what Eleanor would have done. That's who I want establishing the culture of this foundation. Sarah felt overwhelmed. This morning, she had been preparing for another day of creating marketing materials for products she didn't believe in. Now, she was being offered the chance to build something meaningful from the ground up. I need time to consider this, she said finally. Of course. Blackwell handed her a business card with his personal number. Take a week if you need it. In the meantime, my team will arrange temporary housing and support for Michael and Emma. Sarah's eyebrows rose. You know where they are? My driver located them this morning at the community center on 8th Street. They've been living in Michael's car for the past 6 months. As Sarah prepared to leave, Blackwell added one more thing. Ms. Miller, whatever you decide, I want to thank you for reminding an old man what business should ultimately be about. Not just buildings and balance sheets, but the lives those enterprises touch. Sarah didn't go straight back to work after the meeting. Instead, she called in sick for the first time in 3 years and headed to the community center on 8th Street. She needed to confirm Blackwell's story before she could make any decision. The center was busy with people seeking various forms of assistance, job training, meal services, childcare. Sarah spotted Emma sitting at a table in the corner, working intently on what appeared to be math problems. The girl's hair was neatly braided despite their circumstances, another sign of Michael's determination to maintain normalcy. Sarah approached carefully. Emma? Remember me from the grocery store? The girl looked up, recognition brightening her eyes. The lady who helped us. Dad said you were an angel in disguise. Is your dad around? Emma pointed toward a small office. He's helping Mr. Davis with the computer. Dad knows a lot about computers. Through the office window, Sarah could see Michael troubleshooting something on an ancient desktop, his focus absolute despite his circumstances. The center coordinator noticed her watching and approached. You know Michael? The woman asked. We met briefly, Sarah replied. Has he been coming here long? The coordinator, whose name tag read Patricia, lowered her voice. About 6 months. One of the most educated homeless individuals I've worked with. Former financial analyst, if you can believe it. His daughter's a math prodigy. What happened to him? Patricia sighed. The usual perfect storm. Wife got sick, cancer. Insurance denied experimental treatment. He took time off work, got laid off. Medical bills piled up. By the time his wife passed, he was drowning in debt. Couldn't keep up with the mortgage. Then the car accident injured his back, making physical labor difficult. Sarah nodded, each detail confirming Blackwell's account. The most heartbreaking part, Patricia continued, is watching him try to maintain Emma's education through all this. He tutors her daily, walks her 3 miles to school every morning and picks her up every afternoon. The school administrators look the other way about their living situation because he's so dedicated. Sarah thanked Patricia and left the center, her next destination already in mind. She needed to verify the other side of the story as well. Using her marketing contacts, Sarah arranged a lunch meeting with Diane Foster, a former client who now worked in HR at Blackwell Development. Over salads at a nearby cafe, Sarah carefully steered the conversation toward company history. The culture's certainly changed in the last few years, Diane said, unaware of Sarah's true interest. Ever since Mr. Blackwell stepped back after his wife died, things have been different. Different how? Sarah asked casually. Diane lowered her voice. The board brought in COO Richard Mercer to maintain growth during the transition. Ruthless efficiency became the mantra. Anyone who couldn't keep up was cut. The ironic thing is, Mr. Blackwell has returned more actively in the past 6 months and seems unhappy with what happened in his absence. There have been mysterious renovations on the 5th floor, an entire section cordoned off for some new initiative. On her way home, Sarah did one final check. She drove past the address listed on Blackwell's foundation proposal, a recently purchased building that had previously housed a community health clinic. The structure was being renovated, workers busy on scaffolding. The sign out front read, "Future Home of the Eleanor Blackwell Foundation, opening fall 2025. Everything Blackwell had told her appeared to be true. The next day, Sarah returned to the community center specifically to speak with Michael. She found him in the small library section, helping Emma with her science homework. "Ms. Miller," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "Emma told me you stopped by yesterday. Please call me Sarah." She gestured toward Emma. "She's quite the student." Pride momentarily overshadowed the exhaustion in Michael's eyes. Top of her class in mathematics. Her teacher says she has real potential. Emma looked up. "Dad was teaching me about compound interest before." She stopped abruptly. "Before everything changed." Michael finished gently. "It's okay to say it, Em." Sarah pulled up a chair. "Michael, I hope you don't mind my asking, but what exactly happened? You mentioned you used to help others." Something in her tone must have indicated genuine interest rather than pity, because Michael studied her for a moment before answering. "I was a senior financial analyst at Blackwell Development," he began. "Good salary, good benefits, secure future, or so I thought." His hands tensed slightly. "Then Karen, my wife, was diagnosed with an aggressive form of leukemia. The approved treatments weren't working." He took a deep breath. "Her doctor recommended an experimental protocol, but our insurance denied coverage. We appealed multiple times. I requested flexible working arrangements to handle her care and the appeals process. My immediate supervisor was initially accommodating, but then management changed." Emma had returned to her homework, though Sarah suspected the girl had heard this story before. The new COO implemented stricter performance metrics. No exceptions. My numbers slipped as Karen got worse. I requested medical leave but was denied based on some technicality. The bitterness in his voice was palpable but controlled. "They terminated me during the 3rd round of chemotherapy. Called it a downsizing initiative." Sarah nodded, letting him continue at his own pace. "Without insurance, the medical bills accumulated faster than I could manage. We sold the house, liquidated retirement accounts, borrowed from everyone willing to lend." His voice softened. "Karen fought so hard, not just for herself but for Emma. She made it 14 months before her body couldn't take anymore." Emma looked up at the mention of her mother, her eyes revealing a maturity beyond her years. "After the funeral, the creditors came. Hospital bills, medication costs, hospice care, over $300,000 in total. I managed to keep us afloat for another year through savings and odd jobs. Then I injured my back in a minor car accident. Couldn't do physical work anymore. Eventually, we lost our apartment. Been living in the car since January." Throughout his story, Michael maintained a quiet dignity that made the injustice of his situation even more stark. "What about Lawrence Blackwell?" Sarah asked carefully. "Did you ever interact with him directly?" A flicker of something, respect, perhaps, crossed Michael's face. Twice. Once when I identified a financing issue that would have cost the company millions. He gave me a bonus and promised a bright future. Michael smiled ruefully. The second time was when I tried to reach him after my termination. I thought if he knew my situation. He shrugged. His assistant said he was dealing with family matters and unavailable. I later heard his wife was battling cancer too. Do you blame him? Sarah asked. Michael considered this. I used to. Now I mostly blame a system where your health and your children's future can be destroyed by a single illness. Where corporations view employees as assets rather than humans. He looked at Emma, lowering his voice. What keeps me up at night isn't losing our home or my career. It's the fear that I won't be able to give Emma the chances she deserves. She has this brilliant mind and I'm failing her. You're not failing me, Dad, Emma said quietly, proving she'd been listening all along. Mom said you were the strongest person she knew. She was right. The simple exchange nearly broke Sarah's heart. I don't want her to lose her potential, Michael confessed. That's worse than anything I've lost. The next morning, Sarah walked into Blackwell Tower without an appointment, determination propelling her past protesting receptionists. She took the elevator to the 44th floor, striding purposefully toward Blackwell's office. Ms. Miller, Mr. Blackwell isn't available, his assistant began. He'll want to see me, Sarah insisted, her voice leaving no room for argument. Something in her expression must have convinced the assistant, who reluctantly announced her arrival. Blackwell was in the middle of a meeting but excused himself when he heard Sarah was there. Ms. Miller, he said as she entered his office. I wasn't expecting you so soon. I've been doing my research, Mr. Blackwell, Sarah said, dispensing with pleasantries. I spoke with Michael. I verified your story, and now I have questions that need answers. Blackwell gestured to a chair. I'm listening. Your system failed him even before you did, she began, remaining standing. His supervisor denied his request for flexible arrangements. HR rejected his medical leave. The new COO implemented policies that made it impossible for caregivers to maintain performance metrics during family crises. Blackwell's expression tightened, but he didn't interrupt. Michael never blamed you personally, Sarah continued, but I have to ask, how many other Michaels has your company discarded? How many lives have been destroyed by policies you allowed to be implemented? A tense silence filled the room. You're right, Blackwell said finally, his voice quiet but firm. All of it. The admission surprised Sarah. I built this company with the same values my father used, results above all else. I never questioned it until Eleanor got sick and I saw the system from the other side. He stood and walked to the window. When you experience the healthcare system as a patient rather than a policymaker, everything changes. When you face mortality, balance sheets suddenly seem meaningless. He turned back to Sarah. I can't change the past, but I'm committed to changing the future, both for my company and for people like Michael. Prove it, Sarah challenged. Tell me how. Change your company's policies on medical leave and family support. Make them industry-leading. Retroactively provide the benefits Michael should have received. And commit resources to lobbying for healthcare reform. Blackwell studied her for a moment. You would have made a formidable negotiator, Ms. Miller. He extended his hand. I agree to your terms. All of them. Now, will you consider my proposal? Sarah returned to her apartment that evening to find a message from her boss at Westlake Marketing. The Burger Barn campaign deadline moved up. Need completed materials by tomorrow morning or we risk losing the account. Call me ASAP. She stared at her phone, suddenly seeing her career with painful clarity. 5 years of creating marketing campaigns for products she didn't believe in. Promoting fast food to children in low-income neighborhoods. Developing affordable furniture advertisements that glossed over quality issues. Always chasing the next deadline, the next client, the next paycheck without ever questioning the larger impact. Sarah's father had often told her, sometimes the most important work finds you when you're busy making other plans. He'd said it when she complained about career setbacks or difficult choices. Her phone rang again, her boss calling for the third time. Sarah, Where have you been? The client is breathing down my neck about these deliverables. I'm working on something important right now, Mark, she replied. More important than keeping your job? Because that's what's at stake. I need those materials by 9 a.m. tomorrow or don't bother coming in. The ultimatum hung in the air between them. 6 months ago, it would have sent Sarah into a panic. Now, it felt like clarity. I understand, she said calmly. I'll make my decision by morning. After hanging up, Sarah sat at her kitchen table and made 2 lists, pros and cons of Blackwell's offer. Under cons, risk, uncertainty, working for a man whose company had once embodied everything wrong with corporate America. Under pros, meaningful work, better compensation, the chance to help people like Michael directly. The contrast between marketing unhealthy food to vulnerable communities versus building something meaningful became suddenly stark. Between being threatened with termination for questioning deadlines versus having the autonomy to create real change. By morning, her decision was made. Sarah arrived at Blackwell Tower the following day at precisely 10 a.m. This time, the assistant showed her in immediately. You've made your decision, Blackwell said as she entered. It wasn't a question. I have, Sarah replied. I'll accept the position with conditions. Blackwell gestured for her to continue. First, Michael Thompson will be hired as the foundation's financial director with full benefits, competitive salary, and back pay covering the period since his termination. Sarah's voice was firm, confident. He has the expertise, and it restores his dignity rather than making him a charity case. Blackwell nodded slowly. Reasonable. Continue. Second, the foundation will remain independent from corporate influence. Its board will include medical professionals, patient advocates, and at least 2 people who have experienced medical bankruptcy themselves. That aligns with Eleanor's vision, Blackwell agreed. Third, Sarah continued, you will personally mentor Emma in business mathematics. That child has extraordinary potential, and you have knowledge that could help her reach it. This condition seemed to surprise Blackwell. I haven't mentored anyone in years. It's time to start again, Sarah replied simply. This isn't charity, Mr. Blackwell. It's restoration of dignity, opportunity, and trust. Will you agree to these terms? Blackwell hesitated, seemingly taken aback by her boldness. Sarah stood to leave. Eleanor would have asked for the same, she said quietly. Something shifted in Blackwell's expression at the mention of his late wife. He extended his hand. Ms. Miller, I believe we have an agreement. When can you start? I already have, Sarah replied, shaking his hand firmly. 1 year later, the Eleanor Blackwell Foundation headquarters hummed with activity. What had once been a neglected medical building had been transformed into a modern space where families in crisis could find both immediate assistance and long-term support. In her office, Sarah reviewed the foundation's first-year impact report. Over 100 families had received comprehensive assistance with medical debt. 35 people had been saved from bankruptcy. 22 children had maintained educational stability despite their parents' health crises. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Michael stood in the doorway, looking transformed from the man she'd met in the grocery store. His clothes were professional, his posture straight, his eyes clear and focused. The haunted look had been replaced by purpose. The quarterly financial report is ready for your review, he said, placing a folder on her desk. We're exceeding projections for impact while maintaining operational efficiency. Sarah smiled. Your financial expertise has been invaluable, Michael. How's Emma doing with her advanced mathematics program? Pride lit up his face. Thriving. Mr. Blackwell arranged for her to attend that STEM summer program at the university. She's already talking about financial engineering as a career path. Following in her father's footsteps, Sarah observed. With better opportunities than I had, Michael replied. We closed on the house last week. Nothing fancy, but it's in a good school district. Emma has her own room with a proper desk for studying. His voice caught slightly. Karen would be so proud of her. Sarah nodded, understanding how much that simple statement encompassed. Speaking of Mr. Blackwell, Michael continued, He's waiting in the conference room. The first anniversary gathering starts in 30 minutes. The foundation's community room had been transformed for the occasion. Staff members mingled with program recipients and healthcare advocates. On the walls, tasteful displays highlighted success stories and future initiatives. Lawrence Blackwell stood near the entrance, greeting attendees. He'd changed too over the past year, less the imposing business mogul and more the engaged philanthropist. When he spotted Sarah, he approached. "1 year," he said. "Eleanor would be proud of what you've built here." "What we've built," Sarah corrected gently. The program began with Michael sharing his story publicly for the first time, from successful analyst to homeless father to financial director. He spoke with a composure that belied the difficulty of reliving those painful memories. "Sometimes you have to lose everything to remember what matters," he concluded, his gaze sweeping the room. "And sometimes, a stranger at a grocery store reminds you that you're still worthy of being seen." Throughout the room, eyes glistened with tears, the human impact of their work made tangible through one man's journey. As community members began sharing their own stories of how the foundation had helped them, Sarah noticed Blackwell quietly slip away from the celebration. Curious, she followed him to a small side office where he stood looking at a photograph of Eleanor. "She would have been proud today," Sarah said softly from the doorway. Blackwell didn't turn. "Not of me," he replied. "Of you for holding me accountable. For ensuring this wasn't just an old man's attempt at absolution. Maybe of both of us," Sarah suggested. "For listening to the better angels of our nature. For seeing value in people that others overlooked." Blackwell finally turned, about to respond, when Emma appeared in the doorway, her face alight with excitement. "Ms. Sarah, Mr. Blackwell, I got accepted to the young mathematician's summer intensive." She thrust a letter forward, nearly bouncing with pride. Only 20 students in the whole state were selected. The moment of solemnity dissolved into genuine celebration. As Emma detailed her project on financial algorithms designed to identify predatory loan structures, Sarah watched Blackwell's expression. The genuine interest he showed in the girl's achievements spoke volumes about how far he'd come. Their conversation was eventually interrupted by Michael calling them back to the main event, the official announcement of the foundation's expansion to 3 additional cities in the coming year. 6 months later, Sarah sat in her car outside Westlake Grocery, enjoying a rare moment of reflection. The foundation's work had accelerated beyond their most optimistic projections. Their healthcare navigation program had helped over 300 families in the past quarter alone. Blackwell Development had implemented industry-leading family leave policies that other companies were now emulating. Michael had been promoted to Chief Financial Officer of the foundation, his expertise proving invaluable as they expanded. Emma had won a prestigious mathematics competition with a project designed to help families identify financial risk factors before they became crises. And Lawrence Blackwell had testified before a state legislative committee on healthcare reform, using his considerable influence to advocate for systemic change. As these thoughts filled her mind, Sarah spotted familiar figures walking toward the grocery store, Michael and Emma. No longer the desperate father and worried daughter she'd first encountered, but confident individuals with purpose and security. Michael noticed her and waved, saying something to Emma before approaching Sarah's car. "Grocery shopping on a Sunday afternoon like regular people," he said with a smile that acknowledged how far they'd come. Emma insisted we stop by the store where everything changed. "How are you doing, Michael?" Sarah asked, the question encompassing far more than casual inquiry. "We're good," he said simply. "Really good. Emma's thriving. The foundation work fulfills me in ways my corporate career never did." He glanced back at his daughter, who was helping an elderly man with his shopping cart. "Karen would be at peace knowing Emma's future is secure." Sarah followed his gaze and saw Emma discreetly hand something to the cashier as the elderly man, a veteran, judging by his cap, reached the checkout. When the cashier informed the man his groceries had been paid for, Emma had already stepped away, her small act of kindness performed without need for acknowledgement. "She's been saving her allowance to do that," Michael explained, noticing Sarah's observation. "Says she wants to continue the circle." They chatted for a few more minutes before Michael rejoined his daughter. As Sarah watched them enter the store, she reflected on how a single moment, a decision to help a stranger, had rippled outward, transforming not just one family but an entire community. Sarah drove away from the grocery store, a sense of rightness settling over her. Sometimes, the most important letters in life weren't the ones delivered in creamy envelopes by men in expensive suits. They were the ones written through actions that restored faith in humanity. Actions that reminded us we're all connected, all worthy of being seen, all capable of changing each other's lives in ways we might never fully comprehend.